Hello, it's Joyce Bock here from Salubrious Events, and I have Robb Tilley, a real-life Ghostbuster, with me. We did do an interview earlier, but we've got some questions from a couple of listeners and would like to address this with Robb. First question from Irene. How do you know that the entities you see are not part of your imagination or as a result of a mental illness or hallucination?
Okay. I know that they're not part of me because they're external to me. I watch them, not very often with my eyes, but most often with my mind, and they move independently. I could give you an example, just a recent one. A few years ago, I'm waking up early in the morning and just lying there, and the sun's up, and I feel someone sit on the end of the bed. Now, I have a water bed, so the bed moves, rocks, and I thought, gee, I wonder who that is. And I sit up, and there's, as real as can be, there's my grandmother, Granny Tilley, who died in 1968. It's the first time I've seen her since then. I recognised her straight away. She looked absolutely real. And she's smiling at me. And she must have been physically real, because when she sat on the bed, let's say she weighs 60 kilos or whatever it is, so the weight of her sitting on the waterbed caused the waterbed to move, which told me somebody sat on the bed. So I'm seeing her with my eyes, not with my mind. And then the next thing, she speaks to me and she says, "He's not here, is he?" And I heard her with my ears, and I'm thinking, what's she talking about? Then I remembered her husband was a violent man, ex-Royal Marines. Albert John Thomas Tilley is a violent man, and he used to beat her up. And it was really horrible when I was a child. And so I said to Granny Tilley, "No, he's not here." And she said, "Good." And then she vanished straight away. Now, I didn't notice whether the bed rocked when her weight lifted off it, because my mind was on what had just happened. But I mean, there's a real example of. Okay, but in the clearing haunted houses, it's no different. Usually, I talk to somebody, calls up and they want help, and I ask them about what's going on. So I've got a memory of that person's voice, so I can then lock onto them psychically and just look around what's happening around them. And usually the entities, the bad spooks, put their head up, appear, come into view at some point, and I can stimulate them and watch their responses. So it is definitely external. I've never had any mental illness ever. And then the question of hallucinations is very interesting. In Dr. Michael Thalborn from the University of Adelaide, he published a glossary of terms used in parapsychology, and under hallucination, I think there are 5 or 6 different types of hallucination. So the common one is where a psychic person can see something, but the non-psychic people can't. Okay? So there's a very interesting case in 1980 by American psychiatrist Morton Schatzman. He had a client called Ruth. The book was called The Story of Ruth, and Ruth had a lot of apparitional experiences, and she told Schatzman that when the apparition would appear in front of her, she couldn't see through the apparition. She couldn't see what was behind. So this apparition clearly blocked vision. So Schatzman was interested in testing this. So he arranged with Professor Peter Fenwick from St Thomas Hospital in a lab in London in 1980, and they set up an experiment where Ruth was wired to an oscilloscope as a brain monitoring device, and Ruth was sat in front of some flashing lights, and so the flashing lights would generate an evoked response in her brain, which showed up on the oscilloscope. And then the 2 psychiatrists, Schatzman and Fenwick, said, "Well, can you arrange for the apparition to appear between you and the lights?" Which she did. And the apparition completely blocked entirely blocked the evoked visual response.
Wow.
So there is, real evidence from the equipment, from the technical monitoring equipment, that there's an apparition between her and the lights. And then they later had a test for her where they put some clicking sounds into her ears and then asked the apparition to cover her ears. And the clicking sound, again, was completely blocked from the oscilloscope. So is that an hallucination? And the late Dr. Michael Thalborn, one of the other categories of hallucination was where, say, three people, Ruth, myself, and, say, the late Simon Wildsmith, are all very psychic. So if we're in the lab and we can see the apparition and describe it accurately, but the psychiatrists can't see it, does that mean the psychiatrists are hallucinating? Well, we can't have that, can we? That would never do.
Yes, I like your shift of perception there. But yeah, very good. Wow. So where can we read more about that case again?
That's in a book published, I think, in about 1980. American psychiatrist Morton Schatzman was working in London, and the book is called The Story of Ruth. It's all detailed in there. So.
Okay. Very interesting. Right, so next question. How is your success rate measured?
Okay. Well, it's measured quite simply. After I've cleared a place, the most common response is people say, oh, the house feels bigger now. It feels spacey and light and breezy, and the energy's different, and it feels calm and peaceful, and we just sense that the spooks are gone, the bad spooks are gone. And so I leave it there and let it go for several days, a week or so sometimes, and wait for them to phone me, so that they've had enough time, the family's had enough time in the house, and they're all quite satisfied that, the haunting is finished. So I make notes on that, on the case study. Then I call them at 3 and 6 months and 12 months just to make sure that it hasn't recurred, and that's how I know that I'm effective. So. Right.
Okay, yeah. So 6 months, that's quite a while down the track. And, yeah. And there is a survey being done too at the moment with the Australian Institute of Parapsychological Research.
Yes, that's right. Dr. Lance Storm at the University of Adelaide and I are working on, we've done a survey and we just have 3 more cases, and then we get the minimum 30 cases we need for the survey to be valid. I think last time I checked, the success rate there was only about 65-70%, but the survey relies very heavily on people completing the survey. And so if they don't email it to us and they say, I'll fill it out and post it to you, and they don't do it, it does affect the success rate. I know from my own records my success rate's about 85%, but just depending on what results, what surveys we get back, it's likely to come back a bit lower. But nonetheless, it's an entirely reliable. And it's not just me that clears haunted houses. It's lots of other people, the people that taught me, and in turn the people that taught them.
Yes.
So it's a natural ability, and there's always been people, all of human history have been able to do this.
Okay, yes. But it's great that you lend yourself to being studied or researched, so to speak.
Yeah, I said to Lance Storm and the committee at AIPR that nobody's ever done this. Nobody's ever done a study like this. I couldn't understand why. But I thought, well, why don't we do it? And we got funding through AIPR, and we're near the end of it.
Would the results be ready for the conference, or
It just depends. Just depends if we get enough surveys in. Because often I can go and clear a place, and then sometimes one case I remember, the woman was quite satisfied that the job was finished, but she wouldn't complete the survey because she didn't want to put her private details online or whatever it was. So that's part of the problem you have today.
Yes. Yes, we need a lot more research into this.
Yeah.
So your own feedback that you get from the people that you've helped, approximately how many people, so the 85% success rate, approximately how many people gave you that feedback for that rate?
Well, I think we've got 27 cases now.
Okay.
It includes some where we're a complete failure. The most recent case we did, I just couldn't figure out what was going on. It's in a suburb of Sydney called Naremburn, and it's just a very creepy suburb. This particular street and several others, nearly every house in the street was haunted, because Ian Denker and I walked up and down the street and checked out all the houses, and whatever's going on there, I think it may be an Aboriginal sacred site or a burial ground. There's energy vortexes. There's something very strange. Ian's very sensitive to that stuff, and when we drove into this part of Naremburn, he said, "Gee, it's creepy." There's something about the energy. I couldn't understand what was going on, so after 3 attempts, we gave up, and the woman completed the survey, and so that's a negative result that we get, which is part of the survey anyway. We're not successful all the time.
Yeah, that's very interesting, that case. You said that you tried to bring in some Indigenous spooks.
No. I've just decided that Aboriginal people's spirituality is psychic functioning, because psychic functioning is spirituality, and it's their spirituality, and they know how to solve their own problems. And on the few occasions where Aboriginal people have asked me to help, they just want to check me out and find out what I know. And when I say to them, do you want me to help? They always say, no, we'll get our own people to do it. And so I'm happy with that.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Great. That's a whole new area, isn't it? I'd love to speak to some Aboriginal shamans or spirit workers.
Yeah, Aboriginal people generally are quite reluctant to discuss this, because it's their spirituality, and they like to keep it to themselves, which is entirely understandable. Because most people are not psychic. 82% of the population are not psychic.
Right.
82% of the population are not psychic, so non-psychic people just can't make any sense of what we're talking about.
Do you think that's likely to change?
I don't know. It seems to have been a steady number in parapsychology over the last 100 years or so. It's usually 15-18% of the population are thought to be psychic, so it's pretty steady around that number. So it's part of the evolution of consciousness. If you achieve expanded awareness, and all of those people that have had the near-death out-of-body experience, where they died in a hospital emergency room, and there's millions of people that's happened to. Professor Kenneth Ring from the University of Connecticut did most of the research on that in the early 90s. And of all the millions of people that have died and been dead and been resuscitated, only 18% of them have the out-of-body trip down the tunnel towards the light, into the light, and that profound, life-changing spiritual experience. And so Kenneth Ring asked the question, well, why these people? What's different about them? And the only difference is they're psychic.
Right.
And similarly, our research with hauntings and poltergeistry, the only people that report hauntings and poltergeistry are psychic people. And then Professor Kenneth Ring then went to look at the alien abductee phenomena. Why do these people get abducted? What's different about them? The only thing that's different about them is they're psychic. So if you have any of those profound experiences, it is mind expanding. It does totally deconstruct consensus reality for you. And so you think cosmically after that.
Would some of the people that are psychic not know that they're psychic until something happens? Yeah,
I can think of one case that I did with Karina Machado, who wrote a book about this, and she wrote about this case in Sydney. So Karina and I were interviewing this woman who's a journalist. And this woman insisted she wasn't psychic. And I said, well, just describe the experiences you've had in your life since you were a child. And just one episode after another, this woman's had a life of synchronistic psychic experiences, but it's only when she was asked to recall them in a timeline that she said, oh, you're right, I am. Because I think she might have thought that I said to her, are you a psychic? To which she said no.
Yeah.
But if I had said, have you got a history of psychic experiences, she still said no to that. But once she recalled this lifelong history of psychic events, which explained why she had a poltergeist in the house, and we got rid of that. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. And we can develop psychic abilities, can't we, for those that aren't psychic?
Yeah, I'm sure you can, and there's been books published on it over the years, how you can develop your psychic ability. But quite often, if you weren't psychic before you had your near-death out-of-body experience, you certainly are afterwards.
Ah, yes.
And if you weren't psychic before you had your UFO close encounter, you definitely are psychic afterwards. There's no escape from that.
Yes. Yes, and some trauma as well could propel people to open up their psychic centres.
Yeah, because it sort of falls into that category of spiritual emergence. And psychiatrist Stan Groff and his wife Christina have written extensively about that 35, 40 years ago. And they list 8 events that can trigger spiritual emergence, which almost invariably leads to psychic functioning, psychic ability. And some women in childbirth have a very difficult time and end up being psychic afterwards because they have out-of-body experiences. So there's a category, list of categories there, things that are spontaneous. Psychic functioning can arise spontaneously, like in my case at the age of 14.
Yes.
I just had that out-of-body, very verifiable out-of-body experience. But it's a natural part of the evolution of consciousness. And over the last 40 years, the transpersonal psychologists have developed a theory of 4 stages of the evolution of consciousness, of which psychic functioning is the second one. And if you think psychic functioning is weird, you should try to understand the 2 levels above it. It's just beyond comprehension for me.
Well, I'm curious now. What are they?
I don't know. I read the other 2 categories, and I just couldn't get my mind around it. It's even weirder than weird. But it's part of the evolution of consciousness. I think it's just a bit beyond my comprehension anyway.
I like that, the evolution of consciousness.
Yeah, that's what it is, yeah.
I was talking recently to Dr. Marie Batchelor. I don't know if you've heard of her. She was a GP for many, many years, and when her son got hit by a car and died, she went through spiritual emergence, and her whole life just changed.
Yep.
So she's giving a talk in Sydney actually on the 30th of March through Connecting Consciousness group. Okay. So, very fascinating.
Yeah.
Okay, next question from Petra. Have the entities taught you anything or shown you anything that is not already widely known in popular culture or in paranormal writings? I.e., have they ever told you something completely new and unknown?
Oh, gee. I don't know about that one. I think one of the strangest experiences I had was during the 2008 global financial crisis, when banks and insurance companies are going broke every second day, and it was very worrying for me because I run my own business, fixing disability equipment, so that's hospital, nursing home equipment at some time or other. And I had a lot of debt at the time, business debt. And I was in Sydney waiting for the traffic lights to change. And I heard this man's voice as though he was sitting in the passenger seat of my van. I'd heard his voice before. It's good English, well-spoken, clear diction. And he says, you're going to get every green light to green acre, flashing images of green traffic lights into my mind. And I thought, yeah, I'll believe that when it happens. Right? So the lights change green, and I go down Silverwater Road, all the way across Parramatta Road, down into Rookwood Road, all the way down to Bronca Road, into Anzac Street, Greenacre, where my business is. And I get every green light, 22 consecutive green lights.
Ah.
And I was impressed.
Oh.
I was impressed. I thought anybody who can manipulate all those traffic lights on a Tuesday, middle of the day, on a week business day, right? I was impressed. I thought, if that's psychic manipulation. And of course there's a symbolic message in that too. So it's all green lights to Greenacre, where my business premises are. So it's everything's go. It's all green lights to Greenacre. And that turned out to be true, not just for my business, but for Australia, which, if you remember, just sailed through the global financial crisis with hardly a dip in economic activity. So
yes.
So they're good spooks, being able to manipulate computer systems.
Yes.
I'd never seen that before. I was very impressed.
Okay. so it's like a demonstration of what they can do.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, they seem to be able to manipulate. But then there's cases with poltergeists where they can manipulate phones and computer systems as well. So
yes,
it's just another aspect of psychic functioning.
Okay.
So that's about the only outstanding thing. The rest of it that I've experienced has been written about by other people, I think. Nothing really new about it. Yeah. Yeah,
it's a age-old phenomena from very beginning of time, I would say.
Yeah, that's right. Research in parapsychology shows that all peoples, all cultures, all places, all times, there's always been poltergeists and hauntings, and there's always been people like me who can put a stop to it, whether they're a shaman or a medium or whatever. That's just part of the human experience.
Yes, yep. So perhaps nothing new, but we look at it in a different way, maybe a new way.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Okay, one more question. Rob, what is the evidence that the entities you commune with were once real or living people?
That's a real mystery. When I call them the good spooks, I don't know who they are. I don't know their names or faces. And I can tell it's not always the same spooks, because the energy signature, when they arrive at a haunted house, the energy signature is different sometimes. I don't know who they are, but they're very kind, and they've kept me alive all these years, and my life is one long synchronicity. It's like everything's organised and prearranged, so I don't have to worry about anything much. There was one time where I got to, where they showed their faces to me, and it was I got a call from a woman in West Australia who had a very terrifying experience. She was running a home for women with intellectual disabilities, and there had been some very frightening experiences. When she phoned up, she was talking so fast, she was so anxious. I kept having to slow down and just tell me slowly what's happening, and she was really, really frightened. And I said to her, look, I'm just really tired right now. I can't do anything about it right now, but I'll in the middle of the night, I usually wake up about 3 or 4 o'clock and do it then, because the energy's good then. So I went and put the phone down and went and sat down on the lounge, and the two good spooks showed up straight away, and they said, we're going to do this now, Rob. We're not waiting for you. So I closed my eyes and sat there and watched what they were doing in Perth, 5,000 kilometres away, and they cleared it in about an hour. And the woman later sent me an email and confirmed everything was fine, it all stopped. And these two good spooks that were in the lounge room, they came back and thanked me. That's the first time, because I usually thank them. Yes. But they came back and thanked me, and they showed their faces to me. There was a young man in his 30s and an older man in his 40s with glasses. So I don't know what their names are, but that's the only time it's ever happened. So I don't think it matters too much. I think I'm part of that team and they're part of my team, and I don't think it seems to matter much beyond that.
Yes, I think you're saying that you can tell their energy signature.
Yeah.
And maybe that's a bit more timeless because we can go into different, if you believe in reincarnation, go into different bodies.
Yeah.
But it's really the energy signature that carries on.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. I think that seems to be it. Yeah, even with people that are alive, everyone's got a different energy signature, and that shifts during the day.
Yes.
But their mental energy can often be consistent. So yeah, that's how I identify them. Yeah, the energy signature. You could always rely on it.
Fascinating, Rob. Thank you so much for speaking with me again today. If you want to hear more of Rob, he'll be coming to Melbourne, Australia, from the 24th to the 26th of May, and he will be doing a talk on the 25th on the Saturday at Abbotsford Convent in Melbourne. And he'll also be doing a ghost tour as well as a networking function and a workshop as well. So if you're interested, get your tickets. You can go to www.melbourneevents.net to have more information or to get tickets, or you can go into the Eventbrite website and Google Ghostbusters Melbourne and get your tickets there. So any questions, I'll leave my contact details, and hope to see you there. And thanks again, Rob.
Okay, thank you. I've enjoyed it.
Me too. Bye for now.